Thank you very much. I'm Nick. I'm convener for our LGBTQ network, and it's great when a plan comes together. But you organise an event like this, and you realise that plans don't just come together. There are certain key ingredients, all of which have to be in place. And the first of those, and Marianne's talked about it, is culture and leadership. We know that culture starts at the very top of an organisation. The culture that makes it okay to have conversations like this, that we can be safe having conversations like this, and that in spite of enormous operational pressure that our colleagues are under, it's still okay to come to events. So thank you. Marianne offered us this conference last year, and we had to ask for a little bit more time to get ourselves organised. But as anyone who was at Pride last year or the year before knows, Marianne is very much leading this agenda. Sorry, I love this photo. Leading this agenda from the front, in this case from the front of an 18-ton Langer Rourke flatbed truck. Also, of course, to thank our chair, Alan, who opened the conference today, who's been enormously engaged and supportive of the network's work since we started. So thank you to Marianne, and thank you to the chair. And I hope that you will join us for our Pride events in 2019. The second component is about people who are prepared to step up. And when I was having a little meltdown yesterday with just how much work there is to do, my 3Ts team, my 3Ts colleagues have been fantastic and enormously supportive. So to Abigail and to Owen and to Ali and to Richard, thank you very much. To mark two other people, Neil, I think it was next door from our corporate comms team, is setting up this afternoon's activities and has been fantastic and has kept us calm. But also to recognise the work that our BSUH clinical media team have been doing, and in particular Jess Turvey, who I think is here, our senior designer, who over the last couple of years has created the most fantastic suite of images for us. That means that we can be incredibly proud about what we're able to offer our staff. I'm delighted that we've got a new badge that we'll be launching this afternoon, which includes the trans flag, the pride flag, and our straight allies flag, and you see those reflected in the balloons around. And we have a little surprise for you next door, I know, that will come next. So thank you to Jess, who's been an absolutely fantastic friend to the network. And the third thing is people who are prepared to be supporters and allies, and that's why it's fantastic to see so many of you here, network members, allies, colleagues, partner organisations. As others have talked about, what's amazing is when you think just how many organisations have partnered with us, and as we saw in the Networking and Innovation Zone next door, these are all organisations and BSUH teams, not just who are local and engaged in LGBTQ issues, but have done specific pieces of work with us on LGBT inclusion here at BSUH. So thank you to them. And to those who've been to Rob Galloway's excellent human factors training, you will have seen this video. And of course, these are the building blocks for cultural change. Someone who's prepared to stand up and lead, the importance of followers, and of course, everybody then piling in because it's safe and it's okay to do so. One of the things, and I'm not going to do any of that, unlike others. One of the things that you have all been doing fantastically in stepping up is promoting BSUH as a place to work. We've been able to track the proportion of staff who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, plus the new ESR categories of undecided other, since data recording on that began in April 2010, and I'm delighted that in December 18 we passed a new milestone where we now have a higher proportion of LGB and other undecided staff working for us than at any time since April 2010. And we've adjusted the data so this shouldn't be impacted by the proportion of staff who are prepared to disclose. It should be a consistent metric. One of the other things that you've been doing, as Marianne has talked about this, is respond to the staff survey. So this is a little bit more detail behind the data that Marianne presented. These are the national figures, if you can see them, proportion of staff in other acute trusts in England who are LGBT and responded, and this is the BSUH. So if you look at our overall mix, very different between BSUH and the average. So again, you've been stepping up, and thank you. Results by sexual orientation. This is the slightly more difficult message, and that's why I'm so pleased to see the quote that Marianne included in her presentation from Tracy Jolliffe at the NHS Leadership Academy about the courage to confront some of the difficult information and be prepared to move forward in that context of safety and trust. We know for our BSUH respondents, we had nearly 4,000 heterosexual respondents, around 84%. It's very difficult comparing data groups, but what we have done in that staff survey, because we've been able to split it by sexual orientation, is look at, against those categories, how many of the scores for, let's say, gay men were higher than for heterosexual, and how many were lower. So you'd expect a little bit of variation, but overall, if it's about the same experience, you'd expect it to be about 0. So of course, if you're comparing heterosexual with heterosexual, the net score is 0. We had 24, 0.5% of staff who identified as other. Their net score was -24 out of 90. For gay women, and NHS England has helpfully included a little explanation there, it's 104 respondents, 2.3%, and again, a net figure of -24 out of 90. For bisexuals, 114 respondents, scoring -20 compared to the heterosexual comparators. Gay men, 167 respondents, -42. And if you preferred not to say, which turned out to be our largest group with 304, in 95% of the questions, you scored worse than for heterosexual. Now, whether that's a consequence of being unhappy, whether it's a cause, we don't know, but there's clearly that is our strongest predictor for being unhappy at work. So clearly some work to do in that. As Marianne said, we've done our own LGBTQ staff survey last year, and we analysed a lot of the data, and we saw very, very similar patterns as we see in the national data and in the Stonewall survey. And this is a sort of a summary. It's an answer to the question my team manager strived to create an inclusive environment. But it is broadly what we saw. So we are getting it right for most of the staff, most of the time, if you look at strongly agree and agree. Clearly, there's room for improvement, and for a significant proportion of our staff, we need to be doing better, and we need to be doing better consistently. And for a small, but again, significant proportion of our staff, they are disagreeing or strongly disagreeing, and these are the staff often who've experienced direct discrimination. We're fortunate in having the patient-first approach, because what we know is that where you get poor or variable outcomes, there is a problem with our organisational process. And what the patient-first system, and particularly the improvement system, allows us to do is stand back and think about those processes. Where are we getting it right sometimes, but there's a gap or there's a problem with the process and things are falling through those gaps. And it was very useful to be able to talk to Sally, and delighted that the Kaizen office team is here today, and we'll be able to continue that work with them in looking at our organisational processes. The Stonewall Workplace Equality Index is particularly good for getting us to think systematically about the employee life cycle. So not merely how we advertise and our recruitment and our benefits, but at all aspects of that. So we could have called our afternoon session something like evidence-based organisational development interventions to promote LGBTQ inclusion across the employee life cycle, but I'm guessing that if we did, not so many people would have come. Instead, it is LGBT History Month, and some people will know that it's been 80 years since a certain Dorothy Gale was transported from the wheat fields of Kansas into the wonderful wonderful land of Oz. And it seemed to us that that was a useful thing to look at for a variety of reasons. One of which is, it is of course, like the employee life cycle, a journey. There are, as we know, pitfalls. But that ultimately, a bit like the Wizard of Oz, we are looking to recruit and retain people of courage, people of compassion with a heart, people who are problem solvers, and people who want to find a home at BSUH. The whole issue of Judy Garland and the gay thing, I'm just turned 50, so it's perhaps more my era, but I think it's fair to say that that reflects a particular subculture within the LGBTQ community that was predominant in the 40s and the 50s in the States, and it was predominantly white men. And I think another very significant milestone, and this is why that Garland reference is important, it was indeed on the day they buried Judy Garland that the Stonewall riots in New York took place 50 years ago. And brave trans women of colour and other non-gender conforming activists were prepared to stand up and fight back and claim their space. And it reminds us just how diverse our community is and how many diverse voices we have. We recognise that we couldn't necessarily represent all of that diversity within today's event or on our panel. We have included some resources, and you saw the playlist being played at the start of the conference, including a number of Stonewall resources that hear from a variety of diverse voices, and I'd strongly encourage you to have a look at those and use the hyperlinks in your e-programme to do that. There are other resonances, I think, with Wizard of Oz. Although Gilbert Baker, who created the Pride flag, originally the larger flag 41 years ago, but the current rainbow flag 40 years ago, said that he hadn't been inspired by Somewhere Over the Rainbow. He was also from Kansas and moved west to San Francisco. It seems to me that it is an anthem of enormous possibility and positivity, and I know what huge support we've had for flying the Pride flag, a bit like the trans flag, from the Barry Building. I'm also delighted that our Laing O'Rourke colleagues this year flew the flags from some of the tower cranes, and it's wonderful to have those partners there as well. The Pride flag, much like other aspects of our community, continues to evolve, and discussions about how do we represent a whole range of diversities within that flag, and even this interesting one from Manchester. It would be remiss of me again not to remark on 30 years of Stonewall and moving from the Gay Liberation Front that essentially was created at that point of the Stonewall riots through to the Stonewall organisation that we see today. So in that sense, Judy Garland and the Wizard of Oz bookended a period when everything was coded and it was all about signals and no one could be out, to a period, thanks to the Stonewall activists, in which we are now able to be more out, although clearly more work to do. The eagle-eyed among you will have spotted that, as well as that Capital Gay paper talking about the launch of Stonewall 30 years ago, they also announced the reissue of the MGM Wizard of Oz and another 17 minutes of footage. So, Alistair Cook style, we are now back to the Wizard of Oz. I wanted to end by again talking about a quote from the introduction to LGBT History Month from Lady Phil, as you see there, that we need to, this is directed particularly to allies, but I think for all of us to step up, to listen, to give up space, and to speak up. And that's what our next activity this afternoon is about doing. We have created, Jess has created, a Wizard of Oz themed game, which will give you an opportunity to think about some of those hard statistics that we've heard nationally and from BSUH, and to think about the employee lifecycle and what we in practice can do, because as Marianne said, this is about prioritising action. It's wonderful to have the hoopla and the balloons, but this is about making a tangible difference to people's experience. So, we will shortly be asking you to move through to the games room, where you'll find your games board set up. A few of you have table numbers on your badges, and we'd ask you to, this is a chance for us to disperse some of our senior staff, to take those tables. For others, we're looking to cluster you in tables of about 8. We have a very short comfort break, because I know you'll be wanting to get on with the game. There is a prize at the end, absolutely, but do be mindful of timing. So, without further ado, please move through to Grandstand for the Wizard of Oz game.